John Wayne Gacy is a name synonymous with some of the most heinous crimes ever committed in American history. His reign of terror, spanning the 1970s, left a permanent scar on the nation and changed the way people viewed their neighbors forever. Known as the Killer Clown, Gacy's charm and outwardly normal appearance masked his monstrous tendencies. The details of his crimes are as horrifying as they are perplexing, making his story one of the most disturbing in true crime history. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, second of three children and only son to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robison, a working-class family. His childhood was troubled, largely due to his strained relationship with his alcoholic and abusive father, who regularly belittled and beat Gacy, calling him names like sissy and questioning his masculinity. Despite the difficulties at home, Gacy managed to get through school, although he was frequently bullied for his weight and suffered from health issues, which often kept him bedridden. Despite his turbulent childhood, Gacy appeared to be on the path to a successful as an adult, a normal life. Gacy met his first wife, Marlyn Myers, in the early 1960s. She was the daughter of a wealthy family who owned a string of Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises in Waterloo, Iowa. Their courtship was quick, a whirlwind romance fueled by Gacy's natural charm and ambition. By 1964 they were married, and shortly afterward, Gacy moved to Iowa to work as a manager for his father-in-law's fast food chain. In these early years, Gacy appeared to be a devoted husband. He relished the status that came with managing the restaurants, and he worked tirelessly to expand the business. To neighbors and colleagues, Gacy was the epitome of the American dream, a hard-working family man with a growing career. He and Marlyn had 2 children together, a son and a daughter, further cementing his image as a responsible father. They purchased a house in Waterloo, joining the ranks of suburban middle-class families. Gacy even began to dip his toes into local politics, joining the local Jaycees and soon rising to prominence within the organization. Behind this domestic and professional success, however, cracks in Gacy's character were beginning to show. The strain of trying to maintain an image of stability wore on him, and the tensions in his marriage were palpable. Marlyn, though devoted, couldn't ignore the fact that her husband had bouts of erratic behavior. He worked long hours, and though he was loving toward his children, his temper could flare unexpectedly. Worse still, rumors began circulating among the Jaycees about Gacy's inappropriate advances toward young men. In 1968, Gacy's carefully curated life came crashing down. He was arrested for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy, one of his employees. The charges shocked his community and shattered his marriage. Marlyn, who had stood by him despite increasing suspicions, filed for divorce immediately after Gacy pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and by the time he was behind bars, his marriage was over. His wife was granted sole custody of the children, and Gacy never saw them again. Gacy's prison sentence marked a turning point in his life. Despite the seriousness of his crime, he managed to charm his way through the system. He was released after serving just 18 months of his sentence for good behavior. Upon his release in 1970, Gacy sought to rebuild his life.
On a historical note, your Iowa conviction goes back to what year was that?
1968.
68. And what was, just in a nutshell, without getting in too deeply, what was the basis of the Iowa conviction?
The basis of it was a conviction. It's the only thing I ever was sentenced to was a conviction. They're claiming that the state representative's son, who was on the other party, he claims that he was sexually abused by me. And in essence, he was blackmailing me for it. Now, what it boiled down to was oral copulation, and it was consensual. I moved to Waterloo, Iowa. I was honored as Man of the Year because besides working full time, I also, I was the chaplain for the JCs and also ran the membership campaign. And of course, we used property. We had stag shows, and that's how we increased the membership from 150 to 400 members in that JC chapter. We were dealing with stones, and we had a girl set up in a room in that. So it was, the thing to do. We were boosting membership from it. So nobody said a word about it. At the time, this young individual made the charge at me. He was blackmailing me. He wanted more and more money. He said, "Look, I gave you a blowjob. Now you got to pay for this. I said, go see your father." He wasn't getting along with his father, but they came down heavy on me.
Returning to Chicago, Gacy seemed determined to reinvent himself. He re-entered the world of business, starting his own construction company, PDM Contractors. The business quickly became successful, allowing Gacy to once again project the image of a hard-working, successful man. His sociability, charisma, and strong work ethic won him many clients. His involvement in the local Democratic Party and charitable organizations, including performing as Pogo the Clown at children's parties, earned him admiration in the community. In 1972, Gacy remarried. His second wife, Carol Hoff, was a woman from his neighborhood who knew him as a charming, successful man. Carol was a divorced mother of 2 daughters, and Gacy seemed to embrace his new role as a stepfather. Their marriage appeared, at least on the surface, to be a fresh start. Gacy's construction business was booming, and the couple bought a house in Norwood Park. To neighbors and friends, they were a picture-perfect family. But behind closed doors, Gacy's second marriage was far from idyllic. Carol noticed strange behaviors from her husband almost immediately. Gacy was often distant, secretive, and prone to fits of anger. He spent long hours away from home, sometimes not returning for days. His interest in sex waned, and Carol would later recount the peculiar stench in their house, something Gacy dismissed as plumbing problems. Gacy's life had become a grotesque balancing act. By day, he was the successful businessman, the charming neighbor, but by night, he descended into depravity. Unbeknownst to Carol, Gacy had begun luring young men and boys into his home, where he would subject them to unspeakable horrors. In this time, Gacy developed the clown that would become tragically iconic, Pogo the Clown. He often performed as Pogo at charity events and children's parties, creating an image of himself as a man devoted to his community. A clown costume is a playful disguise for most, a chance to escape into a character for entertainment. But for Gacy, it was not a mask. He found a sense of comfort in it, where his true nature found a form of relaxation.
The clowning was relaxation for me. I enjoyed entertaining kids. Like some people are, they unwind in different ways, either by going out drinking or that. I could put on clown makeup and I was relaxed. And I enjoyed doing it. It was it was only twice a month that I did it.
Yeah, this was not used then for a lure to draw kids to you
No, we would visit different hospitals and entertain the children there. And we didn't entertain them with handcuffs or anything like that. All we used was balloon animals and small toys and stuff like that. But we also did parades. And in the summertime, like on 4th of July, I used to be in 4 parades in one day. I've always told people when I got into clown makeup, I regressed into childhood. It was fun being a clown because you could be yourself or just let yourself go and act a fool. You could be slapstick and funny and have a good time. That's why I always enjoyed clowning.
He became involved in local politics in this time, hosting elaborate parties for the community and even posing for pictures with political figures, and was even photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter. Incredibly, Gacy continued to thrive professionally during these years. His construction business expanded rapidly, and he secured major contracts. Behind this facade, however, Gacy's sinister double life remained concealed. His natural charm and networking skills protected him from any real scrutiny. In the construction business, Gacy's hard work and influence were admired, and his habit of hiring young men raised no alarms. The disappearances of these young men went unnoticed, as his colleagues and associates failed to connect the dots between their sudden vanishing and their brief employment under Gacy. By 1975, John Wayne Gacy revealed to his wife, Carol, that he was bisexual. On Mother's Day that year, after they had been intimate, he told her it would be the last time. Gacy soon started staying out late at night, often coming home in the early morning hours, claiming he had been busy with work or business meetings. Carol noticed troubling signs, including Gacy bringing young boys into the garage late at night and finding wallets and IDs belonging to other men inside their home. When she questioned him, Gacy became furious, telling her it wasn't her concern. Tensions escalated, and by October 1975, after a heated argument, Carol requested a divorce. Gacy agreed, though she remained living in the house until February 1976. Their divorce was finalized on March 2, 1976, with infidelity, falsely claimed to be with women, listed as the reason. Robert Piest was a 15-year-old high school student from Des Plaines, Illinois, who was well liked by everyone who knew him. His teachers admired his dedication, and his friends appreciated his easygoing nature. Even with school and a part-time job at the local pharmacy, Robert never complained. He was focused on saving money for his future, always thinking about how he could help his family. His ambition was clear. He wanted to build a career that would allow him to continue supporting the people he loved, and he was always open to new opportunities. At home, Robert was just as thoughtful and caring as he was with his friends. He had a close relationship with his parents and siblings, often making time to be with them despite his busy schedule. Everything seemed normal on December 11, 1978. Robert was excited to meet his mother and celebrate her birthday after finishing his shift at the neighborhood pharmacy. As the workday came to an end, he mentioned to a coworker that he might have a better-paying job opportunity and wanted to check it out before heading home. Robert left the pharmacy around 9 o'clock that night and went to meet the man who had made the job offer. Sadly, though he said he'd be back soon, that would be the last time anyone saw him. His sudden disappearance alarmed his family and friends, sparking an immediate search for him. After Robert Piest's disappearance, his mother immediately contacted the police, knowing her son was responsible and had plans to come home that evening. The last person Robert mentioned speaking with was a local contractor, John Wayne Gacy, which led detectives to question him. At first, Gacy said he didn't know anything about it, but the police became suspicious because of his criminal record and inconsistent stories. As the investigation got more serious, authorities began to watch Gacy. During this time, Gacy made some strange comments and did some strange things, which raised more red flags. A search warrant was eventually obtained for his home. Police found things that were connected to other missing young men and other strange things. The investigation led to the discovery of multiple victims buried on Gacy's property, which finally ended his reign of terror and brought justice to Robert Piest and many others.
Police didn't have enough to charge Gacy with anything, so they decided to follow him. After 2 weeks of constant surveillance, Gacy cracked. With his lawyer present, Gacy told a room full of shocked policemen that he'd killed dozens of young men and buried most of them under his house.
He drew a detailed map of his crawl space, showing where the bodies were so best as he could recall.
Using the map that Gacy made, police began the brutal job of excavating the crawl space under Gacy's home. And one by one, the body bags made their morbid parade to the coroner's truck.
Gacy's victims, whose ages ranged from the youngest only 14 years old and the oldest at 21. This wide age range demonstrates the vulnerability of Gacy's targets. Each lured under false pretenses or promises, were all subjected to the same horrific fate. 5 victims have never been identified. One of the latest unidentified victims is Francis Wayne Alexander, a North Carolina native. He was identified as one of John Wayne Gacy's victims in October 2021, more than 40 years after his death. Alexander had relocated to Chicago during the 1970s. He lived in the city for only a brief period before disappearing, and his family was unaware of what had happened to him. His remains were discovered in 1978. However, they remained unidentifiable for several decades. A handful of men narrowly escaped from John Wayne Gacy. These survivors were among the lucky few who survived. Most victims never told their stories, but those who survived have terrifying memories of intimate moments spent with the killer. One of the survivors gave an interview years after the event, telling how he avoided becoming another victim.
This man, who we will identify only as Robert, was one of the lucky few who got away. Only months before Gacy's arrest, he ran into Gacy in a bar. Gacy brought him back to his house, where Gacy asked him to try a new drug.
Gave me that, and I tried it, and well, it was chloroform, and it knocked me out.
Then what happened?
Well, I woke up in bed with him.
For some reason, Gacy didn't kill Robert. He just let him go. But
John Wayne Gacy's arrest in December 1978, after a relentless investigation by local authorities. The ensuing trial captured the public's imagination, revealing the grotesque details of his crimes. The media coverage was relentless, with Gacy's trial becoming a media spectacle. His defense team argued that he was insane, attributing his murders to a split personality. In stark contrast, the prosecution presented a detailed account of his calculated and premeditated acts of violence. Gacy himself became a figure of curiosity as the courtroom drama unfolded. During the trial, the horrific nature of Gacy's crimes stunned the world. The courtroom was filled with emotional testimonies from the victims' families and graphic descriptions of Gacy's brutal methods. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Gacy pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the jury remained unmoved by his defense, and after only 2 hours of deliberation, they found him guilty of 33 murders, a record number for a single individual in U.S. history at that time. Sentenced to death in 1980, Gacy spent the next 14 years on death row. During this time, he continued to maintain his innocence, often shifting the blame onto his victims or denying responsibility altogether.
They painted this image of me that like I strolled down the streets and stalked young boys and slaughtered them. Hell, if you could see my schedule, my work schedule, you know damn well that I was never out there.
Well, now when the search warrants were affected in your case, they did find an awful lot in the crawl space of your home, did they not?
Well, yeah, I had offered to sell him the house because I thought there was nothing down in the crawl space.
Yeah.
I had never had any qualms about him going down in the crawl space.
Wow. John, how about Tim McCoy, the last one of the 5 that you say you have personal knowledge of?
Tim McCoy, even though he's the last one, he's the first one.
He's the first one, actually.
Right.
The first of the 33.
Tim McCoy was the first one, and Tim McCoy's name wasn't put on him until 1988. Prior to that, he was known as Unknown Number 9, and he was buried by me in the crawl space. That's the only knowledge that I have of it.
What was the circumstances of that?
He was killed in the house in self-defense.
And who killed him then?
I stabbed him.
Yeah, and it was an issue of self-defense. Why was he in the process of assaulting you, or what?
He was coming at me with a knife. I just took the knife away and twisted it in his hand, and that's what killed him.
So at that point, you yourself did bury him then in the crawl space.
right, and if you notice, he's under concrete.
Did you bury any of the others in the crawl space?
No, I had nothing. I had no knowledge of them.
Yeah. Well, why is it that your first one is there, and then 20 some others are buried down there as well? Did somebody know that you had done this with the first one, to giving them an idea?
More than likely, when drinking and getting high with the others, yeah.
Admitting it to them. So you feel others then followed your suit in using this as a burial ground?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And you took him where?
Out on the I-55 bridge.
And that's where. How was he then taken from the car and placed into the river?
Just opened up the trunk and dumped him in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There was no big special deal on it. I couldn't get down in the crawl space that easy, and then I had to bum back to begin with. You got to crawl on your belly to move around in the crawl space. There is no way that I could have done any of the digging down there. I had enough trouble just getting down there.
Gacy also pursued a hobby, painting. His artwork, creating a range from portraits of himself as his clown personas, pogo and patches, to religious and macabre imagery, became a fascination for collectors. Some of his paintings were sold to private buyers, while others were destroyed by family members of his victims who sought to erase any trace of the man who had caused them so much pain. Before his trial, Gacy engaged in extensive communication with journalist Russ Ewing, granting numerous interviews from 1979 to 1981. Ewing's collaboration with author Tim Cahill led to the book Buried Dreams, which revealed crucial details about Gacy's first murder. The information uncovered was instrumental in identifying one of his earliest victims. In a dramatic turn of events on February 15, 1983, Gacy's life was briefly endangered by a fellow death row inmate, Henry Brisbane, known for his own brutal crimes. Brisbane attacked Gacy with a sharpened wire, causing a severe arm injury that required medical treatment in the prison hospital. Despite the attack, Gacy continued to focus on his legal battles, filing numerous motions and appeals in a bid to overturn his conviction. Gacy's appeals largely revolved around challenging the legality of his initial search warrant and his dissatisfaction with his defense's insanity plea. He controversially claimed that while he had knowledge of some murders, the majority were committed by others who had access to his home.
There was 12 keys out to the house.
12 sets of keys?
12 sets of keys. Anybody working for PDM contractors had a set of keys for the house. So you could come and go when you wanted. And of course, my neighbors would keep me informed. They would inform me, God, while you were out of town, they must have been partying all night there.
A number of 3 or 4 psychiatrists, psychologists interviewed
I
you.
had 13 of them. There was 6 for the defense and 7 for the state.
Yeah. What was the
state
position
doctor
of the defense psychiatrists? What did they feel your problem was? What did they come up with from the standpoint of
what the hell is it? God, I can't remember offhand. Borderline personality, antisocial behavior. I don't see how anybody can be antisocial when you were involved with the public as much as I was.
How about the multiple personality issue?
Oh, the multiple personality came out of Dr. Reifman and Hartman. These two clowns from the Cook County there. They came to see me the first time. I said, "Do you want to talk to John Wayne Gacy, the politician, the clown, the family man, or the businessman?" The next day, I see it in the newspaper. Gacy has 4 personalities. What I did not know about this insanity defense is that in the state of Illinois, when you plead not guilty by reason of insanity, you're saying that you committed the crime, but that you were insane at the time. So it's not a question of innocent or guilt anymore. What they're trying to do is your whole trial now becomes an insanity trial where you're to decide whether a person is sane or insane.
Despite his efforts, including an appeal to the Supreme Court of Illinois and subsequent filings to the U.S. Supreme Court, his requests were consistently denied. In mid-1984, the Illinois Supreme Court upheld Gacy's conviction and set his execution for November 14th. Gacy's final appeals were rejected by the U.S. Supreme Court in March 1985, and despite a subsequent petition for a new trial based on claims of ineffective counsel, Gacy's fate was sealed. His execution date was ultimately set for May 10, 1994, following several unsuccessful attempts to delay it. In a final interview, John Wayne Gacy spoke casually about his life and the case with Bill O'Reilly. Throughout the conversation, Gacy avoided responsibility by portraying himself as a victim of circumstance rather than a predator.
Are you frightened right now? Time is growing very short.
No, I'm in a good mood. Why?
So you're not frightened of losing your life?
Bill, do you think about death every day?
No,
I don't.
But if my death were scheduled to be tomorrow, I might.
Well, I'm not.
So you're not frightened at all?
You accept the things you cannot change.
Do you feel any sense of remorse about anything that's happened here?
Well, considering I've never had a fair trial, how am I supposed to feel?
So you're telling me from the heart that you feel no remorse or guilt here at all?
Well, if somebody would have taken the time to look at the facts, you'll find out that they're not what they were said to be. There's more fantasy on me than there is fact.
Even at this late date, you still say that you are innocent.
I will go to my death that way. Until you remove politics from the court system, all we're going to go ahead with is a state-executed murder.
So you feel you're going to be murdered?
That's correct.
Is there any possibility that you would change your mind before the execution and say, yeah, I really did something? Is there any possibility that that would happen?
No, if you're looking for a Ted Bundy, go talk to Ted Bundy.
If you did it and you do not repent, I'm sure the confessor will tell you, God have mercy on your soul.
I am at peace with God.
Once again, Gacy is set to receive a lethal injection at 1 minute after midnight.
On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center. The process was marred by technical difficulties, causing an 18-minute delay and criticism of the method used. Despite the polarized public reaction outside, Gacy's final words were casual, "Kiss my ass," underscoring his complete lack of remorse for the horrors he had inflicted. After Gacy's execution, he was cremated, but the location of his ashes remains undisclosed. The legacy of John Wayne Gacy is a chilling blend of horror and tragedy. Not only did he claim the lives of 33 innocent boys and men, but he also exemplified the terrifying ability of a seemingly normal individual to conceal unspeakable violence. Gacy's case profoundly impacted the understanding and investigation of serial killers, underscoring the critical need for rigorous background checks and enhanced communication among law enforcement agencies. His horrific deeds serve as a stark reminder of the potential for evil hidden behind even the most ordinary facades, cementing his place as one of the most notorious serial killers in American history.
Hey, I got news for you. I killed 33 times. You're only going to kill me once. Gacy outsmarted him again.